It's commencement season, so we dive into words of wisdom on this week's podcast. Graduation season, John. How are you?
Unbelievable, right, Timmy?
Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we're doing this on a Monday. And part of the reason we're doing it, actually, and that's germane, is I was at a double graduation party yesterday. As it happens, Katie's has 4 nieces and nephews, and her goddaughter, Abby, who just graduated from Villanova. It wasn't her party. She had one. My understanding, apparently, and this is a big sticking point with people, but correct me if I'm wrong, that you don't really have a college graduation party. You have a high school graduation party.
Oh, okay.
I was unaware of that stipulation. That being said, my other niece, Katie's other niece, Riley, graduated high school. She's off to Penn State. She did a dual party with one of her friends. She's going to Penn State, and her friend is going to the University of Tennessee. So they had sort of an orange and white and blue theme. It was really cute. It was fun. It was very well done, classy, and it reminded me of us. God, 32 years ago.
Yeah.
We were graduating high school, and then, God, we're 28 years out of Notre Dame, dude.
It's crazy.
28 years.
Yeah.
So
almost half a lifetime.
Yeah. I have a gripe to pick, but before I do, how was your day?
Oh, John, it was one of those days. I got one of those emails from the school you never want to get.
What happened?
Should I share it with you?
Yeah.
Dear Madison community, I'm writing to inform you that after school, this afternoon, there were individuals outside the school handing out religious literature. We want to inform you that those in...
You're such an asshole. Keep going. I get these emails, too, from the school district. Go ahead. Keep going.
We want to inform you that these individuals are not district employees, and the activity of handing out their materials is not endorsed or sponsored by the school or the district. The district informed the group that they are not permitted to distribute the materials on school property. However, the grassy strips in the sidewalk are right of way and free for the public. So
these are Supreme Court cases that have come down on whether or not sidewalks are considered public thoroughfares, and can you have protests, can you have signs there. But Timmy, I will remind you that the First Amendment is not just about the freedom of speech. It's freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, petition, and so forth. It's kind of a big one to proselytize in a public school. I get what you're saying. Lighten up, blah, blah, blah. But I get these emails all the time about somebody came to school and had a gun or these kinds of things.
Yeah, you think it's going to be one of those. I got the email and I'm like, oh my goodness, what happened? And apparently somebody wanted to hand out some...
It does not make it okay that these people were handing out on religious material. I get what you're saying. It's not that big of a deal and there's bigger fish to fry. But I'm not terribly religious, and it's in the First Amendment, Tim. So it's kind of a big deal. If we're going to argue that free speech means anything, you got to kind of go with all 5 parts of the
Is there freedom from speech, though? Like, do they have the heckler's veto wherever they go?
That's a fair point, but if they were on school property, they're violating the First Amendment.
Well, they're on the sidewalks and the space between the sidewalk and the street, which is public.
I wasn't following that. Now, that actually, I think, is considered public space.
It is. They said they can't stop them. They can't stop them. So.
They cannot. No.
Right?
Oh, okay. So, touche. I stand corrected. So, but 2 things can be true at the same time. That is
I imagine the Marxist critical indoctrination that the students get will inoculate them from this to some degree.
Weren't you unemployed collecting from the university for about a year and a half? Aren't you a Marxist?
I wasn't unemployed.
I know.
I was underemployed.
You're underemployed. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, Tim. I do. And I will go to bat that these people have the right to do it. I can see why the school district would send that out, but I also get your point. But it's so in line with you because I'm surprised it didn't happen in California. It happened in Madison.
Right? Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, Timmy, what was last week's trivia? You had one about medical school, right?
It was, what was the first medical school in the United States?
I'm going to guess it was Harvard.
No, it was Penn. Because... Your state.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not surprised it was one of the Ivies. That would not have been my guess, no.
So it was the Medical College of Philadelphia, and then it subsequently became Penn. So.
Okay. All right. That's actually quite an interesting factoid. I did not know that. And you spoke to a group of blind students today this week about being a doctor. I don't want to put you on the spot, but
it was a lot of fun. And I told them about the podcast. So if you guys are listening, welcome aboard. So.
Yeah, right. Welcome. And what, I mean, you are an inspiration. I know you don't like having the mirror on you. I get it. And I'm not trying to embarrass you, but you are an inspiration. That's a wonderful story for these students to know that literally, quite literally, anything is possible. Is it not?
Yeah. And you know, it is totally nice in this whole graduation season to like think about, well, what do I want young people to know? So I liked it.
Well, now, Timmy, I'm also going to embarrass you. I didn't tell you about this in advance, but for those of you who do not know, the name of the podcast is Bald, Blind, and Buddies. Let's be honest, folks. Nobody's turning in for the middle-aged, bald dad bod. Only the second person ever to become a medical doctor is really what's driving sort of the interest among the tens and tens of people that are listening, right?
Yep.
To that end, I don't know if all of you that are listening know that Timmy graduated valedictorian at Notre Dame. He gave a speech. So, do you remember what you said in that speech, Tim?
I do, actually.
My mother remembers it better than I.
Yeah.
Probably because the day is so overwhelming that it sort of blends. I remember Joe Kernan, the lieutenant governor of Indiana, was our commencement speaker, and that was subject to some controversy because how does the University of Notre Dame only get the lieutenant governor? But he was a graduate, and to my mind, he gave a fabulous speech. I rember it, a lot of parts of that as well. So.
I don't remember.
And I did yell out Timmy C before you gave the speech.
You did.
That.
Yeah.
I did. Tell us about what was that speech about?
It was about the cliches of Notre Dame, Notre Dame family and things like that. So, nothing's, but I pointed out that they are cliches and that cliches, it's kind of like what Jimmy says about stereotypes. They have value, right? Like
they're a real time saver.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before we get into today's, discussion, let me give you a trivia question for this week.
Let's
Ready?
do it.
Okay. There is one city that has the four major sports. And of course, I'm not trying to alienate anyone who's a lacrosse fan or WNBA fan. But when you talk about the four major sports, you're basically talking about basketball, football, baseball, and hockey. And there is one city that has all four of those. So that should limit your options because there's really only a handful of cities that have all four. That actually had their four respective teams in the finals of their respective sports in the same year. Ooh. So their basketball team made the finals, their football team made the Super Bowl, their baseball team made the World Series, and their hockey team was in the Stanley Cup finals. And the same year. Pretty impressive.
Wow, that is impressive.
Yeah. And when it was. That's the other question. When and who it was. But Timmy, what are we talking about? And I know you wanted to talk about this.
Yeah, graduation season. It's that time of year. People got parties. You've been at a party. Going to.
That's why we're recording on a Monday because I was at a party yesterday. Yeah.
So it's a time to look forward, to look back, and there's usually some interesting things being said. So I thought we'd talk about it.
Now, did you have any particular? Let me ask you something real quickly. Going back to Notre Dame. I remember Joe Kernan, and one of the things that resonated with me was looking out on the sea of people, because he was probably in his mid to late 50s or 60s, because I think he's since passed. I want to say he was maybe 60 when he gave that speech. And he was very, very sincere and very sort of self-deprecating. He talked about even, I'm honored to be here. I can't believe the lieutenant governor was asked to speak at Notre Dame. He is an alum, which was great. But the one thing that I do remember, too, besides the self-deprecation, was that he said, looking out on the sea, you have no idea how young you are. But when you get to my age and you look back, you will. And I'm starting to understand that. Meaning you have no idea how young you are when you graduate college. You're 22, you're in your infancy. The world is your oyster. And I still in many ways believe that even 28 years later, but it is remarkable how young you really are.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the one thing I remember from Joe Kernan. That's number one. Number two is Notre Dame always invites the president of the United States on election years. A lot of presidents have accepted. Some have been unable to do so. Mike Pence, for instance, gave the commencement when Trump won in 2016. A number of people turned their back. Neither here nor there. But my question to you is, do you think politicians should be invited to give commencement addresses? And what I mean by that is I understand the public interest, but isn't a commencement about the celebration of the hard work of the graduates? So, for instance, Jimmy Carter's most famous, or one of his most famous foreign policy speeches was at Notre Dame. And my curiosity is, you paid all this money for your kid to go to Harvard or Yale or whatever, fill in the blank, State U, and you're having a politician there giving a speech on policy. Is that appropriate as you see it, Tim, or how do you feel about that?
Well, I think those are two different questions. I think politicians certainly can talk at commencements, but I would hope that they weren't always talking about policy, right?
Okay. But again, are they going to do that? I mean, they're politicians. I mean, it's in their name. It's like saying to the water, don't be wet, right?
I don't think so. I think any well-grounded politician should be able to talk to a group of people on something other than policy. For example, Winston Churchill spoke at the Harrow School, I think in 1941, and he has a very short address, but it's his classic "never ever give up," except for cases of good sense and honor, right? And that isn't a policy, but that is something that those graduates probably needed to hear and was probably worth hearing.
I do remember, and we had President Father
Yeah.
Jenkins on, and he talked about President Obama speaking. And, I don't want to put words in his mouth, and I certainly don't want to overstep my bounds, but I got the impression just from hearing how he spoke of President Obama at the time that he was impressed by him and thought his speech was fabulous.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? I mean, and
Yeah.
so, that was that's the reason I'm bringing it. Part of it has to do with the same way that you always pick on Madison in California. I love to bring up Obama in a shining light because he's kind of my guy, as you know. I'm curious, though, how people feel about that generally writ large.
Well, how people
politicians.
feel is a whole other story because there's this notion that everything is political, right? So, for example, Mort Shapiro, he was the head of, I believe, Northwestern, was invited to speak at Georgetown. He wrote an op-ed in defense of Israel soon after October 7th, and a bunch of Georgetown law students wrote and said that his controversial Zionist and harmful opinions shouldn't be a graduation, right? These are law students who should know the First Amendment, right?
I hate to turn the mirror on you, pal, but if I remember correctly, you thought Notre Dame should get rid of that woman who wrote in defense of procreation rights and women's rights and abortion and so forth, right? So I come on, you got to be consistent here.
I am consistent. So there's
you weren't.
Yes, there is.
You thought it was appropriate for Notre Dame she ultimately did the right thing, which I think she still teaches there. She just didn't accept the appointment to head the department or whatever it was because of her controversial opinions on, reproductive rights.
No, I would say this is actually more like if we were to if University of Notre Dame would have disinvited Obama because some students didn't want him, right? That's what this is. So she would be collecting a paycheck from the university in perpetuity to represent the university. This is a guy coming in to talk at graduation. So I don't think I'm being logically inconsistent here.
Okay,
so
fair enough.
Yeah, another Heckler's veto, Jonathan Haidt, who I've talked about on this podcast with a lot of respect. Yeah. Wonderful guy. So
he's real big on get off of your cell phones, and there's a direct correlation between adolescence and depression and technology and so forth, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a book, The Coddling of the American Mind. It's over a decade ago now, I believe, describing how the young adults are taught safetyism and protected. And I think he even had a chapter about disinviting people to speak. And so clearly with no sense of irony, the NYU students tried to protest his coming to speak on campus.
Doesn't he teach at NYU?
I think, I don't know where he teaches.
He's
now.
in New York somewhere.
Yeah.
He might be in
So they wanted to protest him speaking because his platform, blah, 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 is disregarding the very real world crises and systemic hurdles that have defined our graduates' experiences. So their feelings trump everything, which is exactly what he wrote about. It's incredibly ironic. And when he gave a great speech, he talked about how he advised graduates to treasure their attention. And he says this, he says, what you pay attention to shapes what you care about, and what you care about shapes what you become, right? So this guy's got things to say.
He's got interesting things to say. Yeah. I'm struck, the idea behind this podcast today was some famous, speeches from graduations, things that you and I think we have learned since we graduated, and things of that nature. And one of the things that I'm struck by is there's two that really stand out to me. The one is been invited to be on the podcast, and at this point has politely declined, but that does not, I generally don't take no for an answer, as you know, Timmy. And that is Admiral McRaven. He famously led the raid that captured and killed Osama bin Laden. He was appointed as the head of the University of Texas system, and he gave a fabulous speech. And I'll talk about it in more depth. But the other thing is I just typed into Google famous speeches to see what came up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, across the different enterprises, there were a handful of them that kept sort of resonating. One of which was Steve Jobs, and the other one was David Foster Wallace, who has since passed. He died in 2008, but he was a famous writer, and they both gave individual commencement speeches in 2005. And if you will indulge me for a second, I just want to delineate some of the things. So Steve Jobs, it was known as How to Live Before You Die. And Jobs shared I'm reading this directly from the internet. Jobs shared 3 intensely personal stories about dropping out of college, getting fired from Apple, and of course his ongoing battle with cancer, which ultimately took his life. The famous quote, Steve Jobs said, quote, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking." And that quote to me is just phenomenal, because I think one of the things that I want to tell graduates, but it's probably going to fall on deaf ears, because when you're young, the world is your oyster and time is infinite, right? Mm-hmm. Is you have no idea how quickly you're going to be 50 with 3 kids, a potbelly, and worrying about retirement. It's just incredible to me to think that we're 28 years out, and it was like, I mean, last Tuesday we were at graduation. It feels like. Do you know what I mean, Tim?
Yeah,
so one of the things
absolutely.
that I think really should be instilled in graduates is, listen, I know you think you're going to live to 200, and I hope you do. But let's say, for instance, God forbid, we've lost classmates, Timmy.
Yeah.
The other thing is David Foster Wallace. And I found it ironic that both the Steve Jobs and the David Foster Wallace were in 2005. And secondarily, both of them have since passed. And his speech, later published in This Is Water, challenges graduates to choose how they process the world and to practice awareness in everyday mundane situations. His famous quote, "The capital T, truth, is about life before death. It is about the real value of a real education, which is about how to keep from going through your comfortable, prosperous, respectable life dead, unconscious, and a slave to your head." Meaning, you only really get one go around at this thing. And I understand that you got this. I think what these speeches to me say more than anything, and tell me if you see it in a different light, is that I understand that, you got a degree from Stanford. Good for you. And that means you're extraordinarily bright and talented, blah, blah, blah. But the world is going to throw you some curveballs. And you only get one go around at this. Mm-hmm. And you too are going to pass. Don't waste your time worrying about the mundane. And I thought that was just those two particularly, and then I'll, of course, talk about the one from Admiral McRaven, because that's actually had an everyday impact on my life. But what do you think of those ideas, Tim? I mean, is there anything in particular that jumps out to you from these graduation speeches that you wish you had known at the time, or that, I mean, they said all of those things. Joe Kernan said all these things about embrace life and blah, blah, blah. But did we listen? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's 2 questions. And another way I've heard that said is you might be able to do anything, but you can't do everything.
That's Scott Galloway.
Did he say that?
Yeah, he's the one that, how they say, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And he said, that's great for some people if it works out. He said, but you know what you really should do? Become practically good at a skill and repeat that skill. Like he was basically saying this idea that you have to always be happy is just crap. Like figure out what you're good at and do it reasonably well, make some money, and, live your life the rest of your life. And I think that's, the older I get, the more I realize that, look, I may not love certain parts of my job or this or that, but I'm doing it so that I can enjoy the other 25%. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. That reminds me of one lesson I was going to impart. What do you think about this, John? The only person your feelings matter to are you and maybe some close friends.
Yeah. I have a friend of mine who is also a psychiatrist, not you, Timmy. And I remember, I'll never forget when he said this. He's a family friend. And I'll never, ever, ever, ever forget when he said this. I said something, Gorbachev had passed. And I said, what a man. He made such a difference in the world. And he said, yeah, you're right. He said, but at the end of the day, it really only matters what Mrs. Gorbachev thinks of him. That just, it floored me, right? Because it's like, at the end of the day, the respect of people you love is all that really matters. Right? Yeah. I don't, part of these lessons that I have learned just from age is, I tend to be overly sensitive. I tend to take myself way too seriously and blah, blah, blah. And I wish I had a thicker skin and could just blow stuff off. So
yeah, absolutely. Anything
that resonated with you, Tim?
Well, I also liked, did you see Fareed Zakaria?
I've met him in person.
Yeah. He had a wonderful one. And he sort of talked about, AI, for example, that's been a big topic, and how, AI could write a novel, but it can't feel pain, and this notion that our weakness is powerful, and described how he says it better than I do, but how Beethoven was writing symphonies that he could never hear, and that's that's human. And he said, that's something that we need to treasure and acknowledge, that we're not machines and they can beat us at things, but hold on to your humanity. And he says, I'll link it in the show notes, but really, I thought that was really tremendous.
Where was this speech at?
I think it was like Bard College. I didn't recognize it, but
now the other one, just off the cuff, I heard that Steve Carell gave one recently that was phenomenal. That's number one. Mm-hmm. And number two, there was one that Michael Keaton gave. And he said, I'm going to leave you with these final words that I want you to take with you. And I think this was at one of the Ivy League schools. And it was recently in the last 10 years. And he paused and he went, I am Batman. It was just so unexpected. The place went bonkers.
Yeah.
I remember that, though. That one I thought was phenomenal. But, we have a guest coming on the show that he is busy. We won't ruin it in advance, but he is busy giving some of these commencement addresses. And I actually knew years after I left Notre Dame, I was teaching at the university. I was bartending and waitering at this country club, and one of the members of the country club was the former president of Villanova. And he used to request me, and he'd come in. It was, I always used to joke, these two priests would walk into a bar, and it was like, there's got to be a joke here, right? But this is, the president of Villanova. And I remember talking to him about who's coming up for commencement. And he said, the thing that I find frustrating in picking the commencement speaker is oftentimes the most famous people are not the ones that I want. I want someone who gives hope and gives a good speech and blah, blah, blah. And finding that is the key. Yeah. I would imagine some of these people, but the one that really resonated with me, and I do it, is affectionately referred to as the Make Your Bed speech.
Oh, yeah.
By Admiral McRaven.
Yeah.
Yeah. He gave it in 2014, so it's 12 years ago. And I have to tell you, Timmy, after I heard that first part, and I'll link that in the show, the YouTube about making your bed.
Yeah.
I do it every single day now. And it's just, it's a simple thing, but you know what? It makes the house look better. It makes me feel like I got something accomplished. Like we always joke that sometimes if you are having a bad day, my brothers and I joke, and I don't mean this. This is terrible, but watch Intervention. It's like, yeah, I did something today. I brushed my teeth. I'm better than somebody out there,
right.
Because these poor people that are struggling with addiction and so forth. And just the simple act of making your bed. But he has 10 key principles that he outlined in this famous speech called the Make Your Bed speech. That's how it's affectionately known. Mm-hmm. But these were the 10 key principles that he learned to overcome diversity during his SEAL training and make a tangible impact on the world.
Overcome adversity, I believe.
What'd I say?
Diversity.
Oh, now there is a Freudian slip. Did I really say that?
You did.
Yeah. So he says 10 core lessons he learned during Navy SEAL training to encourage graduates to overcome adversity, not diversity, please excuse me, and make an impact on the world. And the 10 speeches are as follows. Number 1, start the day with the completed task. And that's where he talks about making your bed. He says, find someone to help you paddle. You can't change the world alone. You'll need friends, colleagues, and the goodwill of others. Respect everyone. Measure a person by the size of their heart, not their social status or background. That's a good one. Mm-hmm. Know that life is not fair. I think this is an enormously important one that people, particularly in this, to your point about the Heckler's veto and everybody's feelings matter, know that life is not fair and you will fail often. Mm-hmm. I remember that same psychiatrist I was talking about, he had told me one time, he said, I like going to weddings. He said, but I prefer funerals. And it struck me. And he said, because at a wedding, you're just part of the celebration, which is wonderful. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But a funeral gives me an opportunity to make a real impact on somebody's life, on their healing.
Yeah.
So know that life is not fair and you will fail often. And, I love those things about, they show, Michael Jordan, he missed 72% of his jump shots, but by virtue of making 28, he's the greatest basketball player of all. It's just the numbers sometimes when you think about it. Further, don't be afraid to fail. Don't back down from sharks. When faced with bullies or difficult obstacles, stand your ground and don't be afraid. Be the best in the darkest moments. Rise to the occasion, rely on your inner strength, and put others before yourself when things get difficult. Face down the bullies, which is pretty much don't back away from sharks, right? Give people hope. And finally, never, ever ring the bell. And for people, and we're trying to get a SEAL on, I have a friend of mine in Berkeley who's a SEAL. when they go through the training, the basic training, if they ring out, that means they've given up. Yeah. And again, I will not judge anyone who rings the bell.
Right.
Apparently, you have to be. I think the people that make it, either just by virtue of going to SEAL basic training, I think you are an exceptional human being, whether you make it or not, right? Mm-hmm. But the people who make it through, it's just incredible. In SEAL training, ringing the bell means quitting. Never give up, no matter how hard things get. So I just, that speech to me, and there's something about the military and just the simplicity of it that he sees the larger point.
Right.
You know, sometimes you hear these people and they're caught up in social status and blah, blah, blah. And I think a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this, don't misunderstand what I'm saying, miss the forest for the trees about living. And I just think military people sometimes just have the ability to sort of distill it down to its essence. So that one really, really hit me.
Yeah, in popular culture, I think there's a notion that discipline is a bad word, right? And military folks value discipline. It helps make them part of who they are. And I think that's part of this. Things like, what's the line from A Few Good Men? It's like, we use words like honor and discipline.
Code, loyalty.
Yeah.
You use them as a punchline.
Use them as a punchline. And I think, unfortunately, there's some truth to that.
Yeah. And the other thing too is routine, I think, is highly underrated.
Yeah.
I just think routine sometimes is consistency in your life. It's not about doing great things all at once. It's about doing 1,000 little small things every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wrote a few new ideas as if I were giving an address. You want to hear some, John?
Of course. I always love those.
All right.
Any of them come from the Notre Dame speech you gave?
No, these are brand new. You'll love you'll love this one.
All right.
So, you've graduated and you're cleaning out your apartment or your dorm room. You're throwing out that old couch and leaving it on the curb and ditching that geology textbook you're never going to use again. Here's a few other things you might want to throw out when you head out into the real world. Microaggressions. They're not going to get you anywhere, and they're only going to make you look like you're seeking retribution. Any systemic isms, not helpful. Throw them out. Critical anything theory. Throw it in the trash. It's not going to help you in the real world.
Critical anything theory. Okay, keep going.
And the notion that equity is achievable, let alone the target, compared to equality. Throw it out. It's not going to help you.
I think the simplest way I've always sort of seen competition, government, life, I believe in an aristocracy of achievement based upon a democracy of opportunity. Or egalitarianism of opportunity.
Yeah.
I do. I believe in that. So not everyone is meant. My mother-in-law has a little sign in her powder room that says not everyone was asked to do great things, but to do small things wonderfully.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's true. So
here's one that we touched on. I got one more. You ready?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
No. I'm still rambling on here. Take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself so seriously.
Oh God, yes. Put that on a Post-it note and stick it on your head, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many times do we say that?
Yeah.
Even to our guests?
Yeah.
Two dipshits who don't take themselves seriously. I mean, what's the tagline you always say? We take ideas seriously, but not each other.
Not each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I say is, you're wrong. You're probably wrong on a lot of things that I was when I was your age. That's okay. Acknowledging that isn't weakness. Change is not hypocrisy. It's growth. Lighten up.
Tim, I'll be the first person to tell you, and maybe this is a sign of growth. When I was 19, I took myself so seriously. My problems were just no one else can relate. No one else can blah, blah, blah. I mean, woe is me, right? And I just now it's like, grow up, would you? I have no patience for that stuff anymore. My wife and I were watching, Katie and I were watching Saving Private Ryan. It happened to be on, and she said, I've never seen this movie. I said, well, all you really have to see is the first 30 minutes, like the invasion on D-Day.
Yeah. And
she just was astounded. So we ended up breaking it up because it is a 3.5 hour movie. We ended up breaking up. We went to bed and we watched the last hour later. And she said, this is a once a lifetime movie. I don't need to see it again, but man, am I happy I did. And seeing that movie, though, I kind of took a step back and asked myself, would our generation, would Americans today, and I do believe that Americans, when pressed, as evidenced by September 11th and things of that nature, do shine. I tend to think that the best in us comes out. But I legitimately wonder if we're tough enough with microaggressions being a big issue, to invade, Normandy again? Would we win World War II, or would we be speaking German today?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I would joke with Peter when he was heading off to college. I'm like, you know what? Decades ago they were storming the beach in Normandy. You're just going to college. Like, you're going to be fine.
To a certain extent, I mean, Seinfeld always talks about this. Maybe the worst thing we ever did was put a man on the moon, because now everything is compared to that.
Yeah.
You're telling me they can't make a decent tasting pizza? We can put a man on the moon? Well, everybody bitches about everything and uses that as their baseline. Well, Timmy, I think this week I have to. I know it's graduation season and I like to. And by the way, let me just ask you about a bone of contention I have.
Okay.
Again, I really am not taking myself seriously, but it does bother me that it's dads and grads this kind of season. Do you notice that? You go to get the cards for the graduation gifts and so forth, and it's dads and grads. It's like, you know what? No. So what I do, which drives Katie crazy, is I walk around, I say to anyone, I go, Happy Father's Day, the single greatest, most important day of the year. You can imagine how after about twice hearing that, Katie's ready to kick me where the sun don't shine.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
This week, I know it's all about hope. I know it's all about graduation. And for those of you who have graduated, congratulations. Honestly, it's quite an achievement, and enjoy it. Know that your time on this earth can be limited. So do the best you can with what you got. I think hope is a wonderful thing. I think staying positive, finding something you love, find someone you love. I think those are all great, endearing lessons. That Admiral McRaven one, to me, though, what really just resonates with me is the simplicity of what he says and how it applies to a complex life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what differed it for me. But that being said, my whack job of the week this week is another military person. I always have a problem with saying anything negative about people who have served in the military, because I unfortunately was medically disqualified. I want to establish right up front that I think anyone who serves deserves nothing but our gratitude and respect. That being said, my whack job this week is Pete Hegseth, who is the Secretary of Defense. He is a former military person, blah, blah, blah. Do you know why he's my whack job this week, Tim?
Why, John?
You don't know? You don't know?
No, not
I figured
offhand.
you would know immediately. What's that?
No.
Okay. So, as though there's a great line in Seinfeld where Elaine says to Jerry, Jerome, every time I don't think you can become any more shallow, you let just a little bit more out of the pool. To me, the Trump administration, you have to accept the premise that there is no bottom. Every norm that we've come to expect, whether it's simple, whether it's complex, whether it's constitutional or otherwise, he's going to push it, right? And Pete Hegseth, to me, is breaking one of the most foundational barriers, which is the separation between the military and the civilians, right?
Mm-hmm.
As though the president is not debasing the office daily with his behavior, now we're going to have a UFC fight on the White House. Say that out loud. And again, the Babylon Bee did point out that Biden had trannies on the White House lawn. I got it. But where Pete Hegseth has become my whack job of the week is the Pentagon is quietly pushing and requiring, or sort of incentivizing positively, active duty military members to be in attendance. But they have to pass a certain physical test, basically. They want the leanest and the meanest and the baddest, blah, blah, blah. They don't want just people who are in the military, which is bad enough on its face, but they're actually trying to push for sort of, this look. And it just, to me, says third world, China, like where they march in honor,
mm-hmm.
North Korea, where they have these huge military salutes and so forth. It's not bad enough that we're having a UFC fight on the White House lawn. We're further degrading what I thought would never happen, which is the separation between the military and civilian life, by having a Department of Defense under Secretary Hegseth actively push for military members to be in attendance. And oh, by the way, they can only be in attendance if they meet certain physical criterion. To me, there's no bigger whack job. Even though he served in the military, he deserves a whack job. I could make him the whack job every week from here on out. So it's not surprising to me that the man is divorced 3 times. I don't mean to minimize it, but he's my whack job of the week. I'm sorry, Timmy. There's no one that even comes close.
Well, I think it goes back to what we were just saying, is like, life is short and there's only so much you can do. And I would imagine a Secretary of Defense has more important things that he ought to put his emphasis and the emphasis
we
of
don't
the
even
U.S.
have to
military
get into whether or not,
right?
I know, but
like,
this is not even scratching the surface as to why a former Fox News analyst is now the Secretary of Defense. But nonetheless,
So
anyhow,
I think
keep
that
going.
fits. So I'll keep mine short. I just finished reading, and I talked about this on a previous episode, that my son was reading the book Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. So I finished. It's by Ibram Kendi. He's my whack job of the week. Let me tell you why in brief. I live in the land of Joe McCarthy. Joe McCarthy, as folks may know, was a senator who had this habit to his advantage of seeing communists everywhere. Ibram Kendi, to his advantage, has the habit of seeing racism everywhere. He has a premise which is, on its surface, completely indefensible, that any difference between groups is due to racism, negating the fact that if culture matters, then culture will produce different outcomes, and different cultures will produce different outcomes. Completely illogical, but he has managed to capitalize off of this, and my son had to read this incomprehensible work in his class. So he's my whack job of the week.
Did you read it too or no?
I did. I read the whole darn thing.
Now, what speed are you, just out of curiosity, for those who don't know, Timmy used to be able to listen to recordings at 7 or 8 times, right? Human speed?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. No, I used to listen to my computer.
So you would hear
faster.
a 50-minute lecture in about 7-8 minutes.
No,
right?
no. As the computer, I could always go faster. Humans, you have to listen for intonation. So I really only listened to it at like 1.75 times. Nothing crazy.
Oh, I can even do that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's not terrible. All right. Was it as bad as you presupposed?
Worse.
This is sort of like Sixth Sense. I see dead people. I see racism. Is that what you're telling me?
Pretty much. Yeah,
Gotcha.
pretty much.
Okay.
Right. And it's the classic, because they combine it with the classic dodge, was if you don't see racism, then you have white fragility and you're in denial. So you can either agree you can either agree you're racist or you're racist in denial. It's really
it's a heads I win, tails you lose premise.
Pretty much.
Yeah, gotcha. So. Understood. Well, Timmy, wonderful to catch up. And for all of those grads again out there, congratulations. Enjoy it. You've earned it. And I just say, welcome to the real world. Get a job, kid, like my dad used to say. I asked my dad one time, I said, how did you know what you wanted to do when you got out of college? And he said, your mother told me she was pregnant. I grabbed a job. I thought that was awesome because it's like, not everything has to be dramatic. So.
Yeah.
So listen, Timmy, great talking. And this is John Boland signing off saying, hey, misbehave, drive fast, take chances.
Yeah, and this is Tim saying, take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself so seriously. And if everybody likes what you're doing, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. Let's keep talking.